You are probably proud of your salary. You negotiated hard for it. You trade your best hours for it. But that very same paycheck is the precise mathematical instrument keeping you from ever becoming truly wealthy. The middle class operates under a catastrophic delusion. You have been conditioned to believe that a high income equals wealth. Income is simply a heavily taxed metric of your labor. Wealth is a system. And until you understand the mechanics of that system, you will spend your entire life working for money instead of forcing money to work for you. The financial system is not broken. It is functioning exactly as designed. When you earn a wage, you are participating in the most inefficient financial transaction legally permitted. You generate value, the government takes the largest possible cut, and you are left with the scraps to fund your lifestyle. This is the trap of linear income. If you want to double your money, you have to double your hours. But there is a hard ceiling to your time. The ultra-wealthy do not sell their time. They acquire assets. They build equity. They utilize a mechanism that the average worker is taught to fear. But why would someone with $100 million in the bank borrow money to buy an asset? The answer reveals the greatest dividing line between the working class and the ownership class. If you save $10,000 from your salary, you have already paid up to 40% in taxes on that money. If you borrow $10,000 against an asset you own, you pay 0% in taxes. Debt is not recognized as income. The wealthy use structural debt as a tax shield. They buy an income-producing asset, let it appreciate, and borrow against the equity to fund their lifestyle or buy more assets. The interest on that loan is often tax-deductible. The middle class uses debt to buy depreciating liabilities. They borrow to consume. The wealthy borrow to produce. They leverage cheap capital to acquire cash flow, using the revenue from the asset to pay down the debt while keeping the equity. It is a closed-loop system of capital preservation. But knowing this is only half the equation. The real barrier is psychological. How do you actually cross the bridge from employee to owner without risking everything you have already built? You stop focusing on the absolute number on your paycheck and start focusing on your conversion rate. How much of your active wage are you converting into passive equity? Every dollar you earn is an employee. When you spend it on lifestyle inflation, you fire that employee. When you deploy it into the market, into real estate, or into a business, you put that employee to work. That is the true power of compound interest. It is not just about a savings account yielding a few percent a year. It is the geometric expansion of your capital over time, independent of your physical labor. The math is cold and it is unforgiving. If you rely solely on your wage, inflation will quietly confiscate your purchasing power year after year. The wealthy know that cash is a melting ice cube. They hold assets because assets adjust to inflation. Valuations go up. The debt used to buy those assets stays fixed, meaning the debt actually gets cheaper as inflation rises. This is not about luck. This is not about waking up at 4 a.m. or grinding until you burn out. It is about architectural design. It is about understanding the rules of a game you are already playing, whether you realize it or not. The financial system rewards owners and penalizes laborers. The transition requires a fundamental rewiring of how you perceive risk, debt, and time. Stop trying to save your way to a wealth tier that demands leverage and equity. Your wage is your seed capital. It is time to start building the machine instead of just being a cog inside of it. But building that machine is impossible if you fall into the most insidious trap of the modern economy: lifestyle inflation. It is not just a lack of discipline. It is a predictable, mechanical response to a system designed to extract every surplus dollar you generate. When your income rises, your baseline for comfort magically rises with it. You convince yourself you have earned the upgrade. You trade your surplus capital for the illusion of arrival. This is Parkinson's law applied to personal finance. Expenses will inevitably expand to match the income available for their consumption. A 10% raise triggers a 12% increase in lifestyle overhead. The math is brutal. You are making more money than you ever have, yet you feel poorer. You are running faster on the treadmill just to stay in the exact same place. The financial industry counts on this behavior. They bank on your inability to separate your self-worth from your spending habits. Look at the ecosystem surrounding you. It is a highly optimized extraction engine. From targeted algorithms to algorithmic credit limits, the environment is engineered to separate you from your newly acquired capital. Every piece of software, every subscription, every targeted advertisement is calibrated to normalize luxury. The moment your bank account swells, the system deploys frictionless ways for you to drain it. You are not just fighting your own impulses. You are fighting billion-dollar algorithms designed to exploit your psychological craving for status. The result is a society filled with high-earning, zero-net-worth professionals. They live in premium zip codes. They drive depreciating liabilities with leather seats. They wear the uniform of success, but their balance sheet is a disaster. They possess the aesthetic of wealth, completely devoid of the mechanics of wealth. If their paycheck stops for 30 days, their entire curated reality collapses. They are wealthy in appearance, but bankrupt in autonomy. This happens because consumption is a programmed behavioral loop. It is a habit system deeply ingrained in the human psyche. When you experience a surge in resources, your brain seeks the immediate dopamine hit of a reward. You buy the better car, you upgrade the apartment, you normalize the new baseline almost instantly. What was a luxury on Monday becomes a non-negotiable necessity by Friday. Once that new baseline is set, the habit system locks you in. Downgrading feels like a failure. Retreating to your previous standard of living registers as psychological pain, so you defend the new lifestyle at all costs. You take on debt to bridge the gap between what you earn and what your new identity demands. The habit system overrides your financial logic. You stop making decisions based on math and start making decisions based on ego preservation. Let us break down the exact procedural mechanics of this trap. The trigger is the influx of cash. A bonus, a promotion, a successful launch. The routine is the immediate rationalization of an upgrade. You tell yourself it is an investment in your personal brand or a necessary reward for your hard work. The reward is the fleeting spike in social status. But the hidden cost is the destruction of your investment capital. You have traded a permanent asset for a temporary feeling. The procedural math exposes the absurdity of this cycle. Earning $250,000 a year means absolutely nothing if your lifestyle burns through $245,000 of it. Your margin is a rounding error. You have the exact same financial fragility as someone earning minimum wage and living paycheck to paycheck. The absolute numbers are larger, but the systemic vulnerability is identical. Wealth is never measured by the gross revenue of your household. It is measured entirely by the retained earnings. The systemic consequence of this behavior is permanent capture. By inflating your lifestyle to match your income, you voluntarily shackle yourself to the labor market. You become a high-paid, indentured servant to your own consumption. You cannot take a risk. You cannot start the business. You cannot walk away from the toxic boss. Your expensive life requires a constant, uninterrupted stream of active labor just to sustain the illusion. True wealth is found in the gap between your ego and your income. It is the deliberate, aggressive defense of your surplus capital. To break the cycle, you must sever the link between earning more and spending more. When the raise comes, the lifestyle stays frozen. You weaponize that new capital and force it into the market. You buy your freedom with the money you refuse to spend on status. That is how the game is actually won. You are probably working twice as hard to pay off a debt that the ultra-wealthy would do anything to keep. Society has convinced you that a zero balance is the ultimate financial finish line. Being entirely debt-free is one of the most expensive financial mistakes the middle class makes. It traps your capital, it kills your liquidity, and it guarantees you will spend the rest of your life trading your time for wages. The wealthy do not fear debt. They weaponize it. They use a specific mechanical structure to turn borrowed money into tax-free wealth, while the working class uses it to buy depreciating liabilities. The difference between the two is not how much money is made. It is how the money is positioned. The 1% builds empires on borrowed capital, while the standard savings account secretly bleeds the middle class dry. Consider the mechanics of a standard paycheck. You earn a wage, the government takes its tax cut, and you try to save what is left. You are taxed on your production. The wealthy operate on a completely different axis. They acquire assets like real estate, businesses, and equities, and they almost never sell them. Selling triggers a capital gains tax. Instead, they pledge those assets as collateral to secure a line of credit. When you borrow against an asset, the IRS does not recognize that loan as income. It is entirely tax-free. You get the cash, you keep the asset, and the asset continues to compound in the background. This is the architecture of structural debt. But taking on debt without a system is financial suicide. The working class uses high-interest credit cards to fund lifestyle inflation, bleeding out through a 25% APR. The wealthy use low-interest collateralized loans to acquire more income-producing assets. The debt pays for itself. But there is a missing piece to this equation, a mathematical lever that makes this entire system bulletproof against inflation. Inflation destroys purchasing power. If you hold cash in a standard bank account, the silent tax of inflation is eroding your wealth every single day. But inflation is the greatest ally of a strategic debtor. If you secure debt at a fixed rate today, you are paying back that loan tomorrow with dollars that are worth less. The debt literally shrinks in real economic value over time. Combine this with compound interest on the underlying asset, and you create a wealth generation machine. The asset grows, the debt shrinks, the tax burden remains zero. You are taught to save your way to wealth, but you cannot outsave the debasement of currency. You have to outstructure it. The transition from employee to owner requires abandoning the moral high ground of being debt-free and embracing the cold mathematics of leverage. Crossing that bridge without collapsing under the weight of bad liabilities requires a fundamental shift in how you view your own balance sheet. It starts with a ruthless audit of your cash flow. Stop funneling your surplus capital into paying down low-interest fixed-rate debt, that is, debt equity. If your mortgage costs you 4%, but you can confidently deploy that capital into an asset yielding 8%, paying off your house is costing you a massive opportunity. You are sacrificing compound growth for a psychological safety net. True financial security does not come from owning your home outright. It comes from controlling enough cash-producing assets to cover your liabilities 10 times over. Wealth is not a reward for hard work. It is the byproduct of an optimized system. The banking infrastructure of the elite is not hidden by passwords or secret societies. It is hidden by boring terminology and a culture that glorifies the struggle of the wage earner. Stop playing the game they designed for you. Learn the mechanics. Build the system. Become the owner. The mechanics of lifestyle inflation are brutally efficient. The moment your income increases, a silent psychological trigger shifts your baseline of acceptable living. You do not consciously decide to blow your new wealth. Instead, you rationalize incremental upgrades that feel like natural progressions. A slightly better car, a marginally larger apartment, premium brands replacing generic necessities. These micro-adjustments bypass your financial defenses because individually they seem insignificant, but collectively, they act as a parasitic drain on your surplus capital. This incremental upgrading destroys your wealth potential through compound opportunity cost. When you allocate a $10,000 raise to a more expensive lease and a luxury car payment, you are not just losing $10,000 a year, you are forfeiting the decades of compound growth that capital could have generated. You are trading future financial sovereignty for present-day comfort. The system encourages this exact behavior because a consumer with zero surplus capital is a compliant worker. Your upgraded lifestyle becomes a golden cage, entirely dependent on your next paycheck. This trap is scientifically known as hedonic adaptation. It is the psychological phenomenon where humans rapidly return to a baseline level of happiness, regardless of positive or negative events. When you buy the luxury vehicle, the dopamine spike is intense, but fleeting. Within 6 months, that extraordinary machine just becomes the car you drive to work. The thrill evaporates, but the hefty monthly payment remains. You are left paying a premium for an experience you no longer even notice. Because the initial high fades, the system demands a larger dose to achieve the same effect. You start eyeing a bigger house, exotic vacations, or exclusive memberships. You are no longer buying utility. You are buying a temporary chemical release in your brain, funded by your future financial freedom. This is the ultimate consumer trap. You run faster and faster, generating more income, only to find yourself in the exact same financial position. Your net worth stagnates while your stress levels compound. The emotional toll of this realization is devastating. You look at your high salary and wonder why you still feel suffocated by bills. The anxiety of maintaining an inflated lifestyle breeds a deep, unspoken resentment toward your own career. You are earning more than you ever dreamed, yet you feel poorer than when you started. That cognitive dissonance is exhausting. It creates a perpetual state of financial anxiety, masked by the outward appearance of success. You become terrified of losing your income because you have built a life with zero margin for error. The thought of downsizing feels like failure. Society has trained you to view a reduction in lifestyle as a public admission of defeat, so you endure the stress. You tolerate toxic work environments and compromise your values just to keep the cash flowing. Your possessions no longer serve you. You are trapped in a self-imposed financial prison, guarding the very walls that keep you locked inside. Escaping this trap requires recognizing the treadmill for what it is. It is not a path to happiness. It is a highly engineered mechanism designed to extract your surplus labor. Every advertisement, every social media feed, and every cultural expectation is calibrated to keep you running. They sell you the illusion that the next purchase will finally deliver lasting satisfaction. It is a mathematical impossibility. You cannot consume your way to peace of mind. Stepping off the treadmill demands a radical act of defiance. You must intentionally decouple your income from your lifestyle. When your revenue scales, your expenses must remain violently flat. This is the secret to rapid wealth accumulation. By holding your lifestyle constant while your income grows, you create a massive delta of surplus capital. This is the capital that buys assets. This is the capital that buys back your time. Look at the world around you. It is a frictionless landscape designed for maximum capital extraction. One-click purchasing, targeted algorithmic marketing, and seamless credit integration are weaponized against your future self. The digital environment is a casino where your attention and your wallet are constantly under siege. Every app on your phone is optimized to convert your hard-earned cash into someone else's corporate revenue. The infrastructure of modern consumption is invisible, omnipresent, and relentlessly efficient. To survive in this environment, you must adopt a hostile posture toward casual spending. You must view every lifestyle upgrade as a direct threat to your financial independence. The people who actually win this game do not look like the stereotypes of wealth portrayed on your screen. They drive unremarkable cars. They live in modest homes. They use the invisible environment of consumption to their advantage, owning the systems that extract wealth from everyone else. They refuse to run on the treadmill because they are the ones who own the gym. You have been lied to about debt. You were taught that paying off your mortgage is the ultimate financial achievement. It is a mathematical trap designed to keep your capital dead, trapped in drywall and wood, while inflation eats your net worth alive. The middle class buys liabilities with cash and pays interest on depreciating assets. The wealthy do the exact opposite. They buy cash-flowing assets with debt and use the tax code to make that debt virtually free. The difference is not how hard you work, it is how you structure your capital. Look at the basic mechanics of a high-income earner. You save money, put it in a brokerage account, and watch it grow. But every time you sell an asset to fund your lifestyle, you trigger a capital gains tax. You are penalized for accessing your own money. The ultra-wealthy do not sell their assets. They borrow against them, because a loan is not taxable income. That simple distinction is the foundation of a strategy that completely bypasses the traditional tax system. But to understand how to execute this, you first have to understand the true cost of the money you are holding right now. Let us talk about opportunity cost and the concept of a tax shield. When you use your own post-tax dollars to buy a car or fund an expense, that money is gone. It can never compound again. When a corporation or a wealthy individual needs capital, they use leverage. They take on debt at a fixed APR. If their investments yield a higher percentage than that APR, they are capturing a spread on money that never belonged to them in the first place. But it gets better. The interest paid on that debt is often tax deductible when used for investment purposes. The debt creates a tax shield, lowering their taxable income while their underlying assets continue to appreciate. You are playing a game of addition. They are playing a game of geometric multiplication. You might think this requires millions in collateral to start. The mechanics of leverage apply the moment you stop treating debt as a moral failing and start treating it as a financial tool. The question is, how do you transition from consumer debt, which bleeds you dry, to structural debt, which builds your empire? It starts by auditing your balance sheet. The banking system relies on your financial illiteracy. They want you focused on your FICO score so you can qualify for a premium credit card or a slightly better rate on a car loan. That is consumer-level thinking. Asset-level thinking focuses on cash flow and collateral. If you own a portfolio of dividend-paying equities or real estate, you can access a portfolio line of credit. You borrow against the asset, use the borrowed liquidity to acquire another income-producing asset, and let the new cash flow pay down the interest. The original asset remains untouched, compounding in the background. This is not a loophole. It is the intended function of the global financial system. The tax code is not a list of penalties. It is a map of incentives. It rewards those who provide housing, create jobs, and deploy capital. It punishes those who simply earn a wage and save what is left. Your salary will never outpace the compounding mechanics of structured wealth. Stop trading your time for linear income and start trading your capital for exponential leverage. The transition from employee to owner does not begin when you finally save enough money. It begins the moment you change how you use it. The emotional cost of this cycle is rarely discussed. When you finally secure that significant raise, the initial euphoria quickly fades into a lingering, low-grade anxiety. You realize the extra money has already vanished into a higher cost of living before the month even ends. You are earning more than ever, yet you feel completely broke. You are not buying comfort with that new income. You are purchasing a higher baseline of stress. The luxury vehicle requires premium insurance. The larger house demands higher property taxes and endless maintenance. These are the golden handcuffs, locking you into a psychological prison where you must maintain a flawless performance at work just to keep the lights on. This is the quiet, violent mechanism of lifestyle inflation. It is not merely the act of buying expensive things. It is the systematic destruction of your investable capital. It is the exact process by which high earners voluntarily surrender their financial independence. Every single dollar absorbed by an inflated lifestyle is a dollar permanently stolen from your leverage. You are feeding the corporate consumption engine instead of fortifying your own balance sheet. You are trading exponential future wealth for a fleeting hit of present-day dopamine. Look closely at the affluent suburbs of the high-earning working class. The driveways are filled with rapidly depreciating liabilities. The sprawling homes are optimized for aesthetic validation rather than genuine equity growth. It is an environment built entirely on the illusion of success. What you are actually observing is a landscape of high-functioning poverty. These individuals look wealthy, but their net worth is a fragile house of cards constructed from monthly payments and rolling consumer debt. A single missed paycheck or a sudden market downturn brings the entire artificial structure crashing to the ground. The global economy is perfectly engineered to capture your surplus income. The exact moment your salary increases, the market presents a completely frictionless path to upgrade your consumption. The algorithms know your new income bracket before you even update your resume, serving you targeted ads designed to elevate your spending habits. You must radically reframe how you view increased cash flow. A raise is never permission to expand your expenses. It is an expansion of your margin. That gap between what you earn and what you consume is the only fuel that powers true wealth creation. When your income jumps, you must immediately freeze your lifestyle baseline. If you secure an extra $30,000 a year, that capital does not belong to a luxury car dealership or a high-end real estate broker. It belongs directly to your asset acquisition strategy. You must automate the diversion of that surplus before it ever hits your primary checking account. Route it ruthlessly into brokerage accounts, cash-flowing real estate, or private equity investments. You must actively starve your lifestyle in the present to feed your portfolio for the future. The ultimate consequence of failing to do this is a lifetime of mandatory, inescapable labor. If your expenses always rise to meet your income, you will never break free from the cycle of dependency. You will simply be trapped on a more expensive treadmill, sprinting at maximum capacity just to remain in the exact same place. True wealth is never measured by the square footage of your home or the brand of your watch. It is measured exclusively by the amount of time you control. Lifestyle inflation actively steals your future time. Ruthlessly defending your margin is the only way to buy your freedom back. You have been conditioned to believe that the ultimate financial goal is to be completely debt-free. It sounds responsible, and it is exactly the mindset keeping you trapped in the middle class. While you are aggressively paying down a 3% mortgage, the ultra-wealthy are actively taking on hundreds of millions in debt. They are not reckless. They are playing a completely different game with a completely different set of rules. The question isn't why they love debt. The question is what they know about your money that you don't. Look at the math. When you trade your time for a wage, you store that labor in cash. But cash is a melting ice cube. Inflation silently erodes your purchasing power every single second. You are holding a depreciating asset. Now flip the board. What happens to debt during periods of high inflation? The value of the debt shrinks. The wealthy use inflation to burn away the real cost of their liabilities. They borrow money today, buy an appreciating asset, and pay back the bank tomorrow with dollars that are worth fundamentally less. You are saving your way to poverty. They are borrowing their way to prosperity. But the math of inflation is only the first layer. The real leverage comes from how debt interacts with the single biggest expense of your lifetime. As a wage earner, your income is taxed before it ever hits your bank account. You generate value, the government takes its cut, and you are left with the scraps. Wealth operates in reverse. The wealthy do not earn income. When those assets appreciate in value, they do not sell them. Instead, they use those assets as collateral to borrow cash. Debt is not taxable income. This is the tax shield. You can pull millions of dollars out of an asset portfolio, live entirely tax-free, and let the underlying asset continue to compound. It is a closed-loop system of perpetual wealth generation. You might think this strategy requires a massive trust fund or a Wall Street pedigree. It requires a fundamental rewiring of how you define ownership. The transition from wage to wealth starts by killing the illusion that your salary will make you rich. Your salary is simply the seed capital required to buy your way out of the labor pool. Every dollar you earn has an opportunity cost. When you inflate your lifestyle to match your income, you are actively choosing consumption over equity. You are buying liabilities that drain your cash flow instead of assets that produce it. The mathematics of compound interest demand time and capital. You cannot leverage time if you are constantly trading it for a paycheck. You must convert your active income into passive equity. You stop working for the dollar. You force the dollar to work for you. The global financial system is a machine. It does not care how hard you work. It only cares how you position yourself within its gears. You can remain a wage earner paying the highest taxes, holding the weakest currency, and funding the system. Or you can learn the mechanics of the wealthy. Leverage structural debt. Optimize your tax burden. The blueprint is right in front of you. It is time to stop playing by the rules designed to keep you poor. The habit of lifestyle inflation is not an accident. It is a highly engineered procedural loop designed to strip you of surplus capital. The moment your income increases, your brain justifies a new baseline. You get a promotion and immediately calculate how much more you can afford in monthly payments. You do not calculate how much more equity you can acquire. This is the fatal flaw in middle-class arithmetic. You treat an increase in cash flow as permission to expand your liabilities. Look at the mechanics of the upgrade. You trade in a perfectly functional vehicle for a newer model, rolling the negative equity into a fresh loan. You justify a larger apartment because you feel you have earned the extra space. You add premium subscriptions, higher tier memberships, and luxury conveniences. Each decision feels small in isolation. But procedurally, you are building a fixed cost infrastructure that consumes every new dollar you generate. You are manually adjusting your burn rate to ensure your net worth never actually grows. The systemic consequence of this behavior is exactly what the financial sector relies on. When you inflate your lifestyle through credit and financing, you become a highly predictable yield generator for institutional banks. Your desire to project wealth funds their actual wealth. The system requires a massive population of high earners who spend everything they make. This liquidity keeps the consumer economy churning. It ensures that credit card companies and auto lenders hit their quarterly targets. You are functionally operating as a conduit. Capital flows from your employer, briefly touches your bank account, and is immediately routed to your creditors. The system is designed to capture your surplus before it can ever compound. By matching your lifestyle to your income, you voluntarily lock yourself into the labor market. The corporations you work for depend on this exact dynamic. A workforce burdened by high fixed costs is a compliant workforce. You cannot afford to take risks, start a competing venture, or simply walk away. The emotional toll of this systemic trap is quiet but relentless. You make more money than you ever have, yet you feel more financially precarious than when you were broke. The anxiety does not come from a lack of income. It comes from the razor-thin margin between your massive cash flow and your massive obligations. You are trapped in a high-stakes balancing act. One missed paycheck, one medical emergency, or one corporate restructuring threatens to collapse the entire facade. This creates a profound psychological exhaustion. You are running on a treadmill that automatically accelerates every time you try to catch your breath. The luxury goods that were supposed to signal your success now feel like anchors. You resent the house you thought you wanted because it demands constant maintenance and property taxes. You resent the car because the depreciation outpaces your payments. The golden handcuffs are heavy. You realize too late that you did not buy freedom. You bought a more expensive flavor of captivity. This realization is the pivot point where the illusion shatters. You must confront the reality that your current trajectory is fundamentally wealth-destroying. High income is merely a vanity metric if your net worth is stagnant. The transition requires a brutal audit of your fixed costs. You have to stop viewing your spending capacity as a measure of your success. True financial power is not about what you can afford to finance. It is about what you can afford to own outright. To halt the wealth destruction, you must ruthlessly decouple your lifestyle from your earnings. If your income doubles, your expenses must remain frozen. That gap between what you earn and what you consume is your only escape velocity. It is the raw material for acquiring assets that pay you while you sleep. Until you widen that gap, you are just a high-paid tenant in the global financial system. You have to choose between looking rich today or actually being rich tomorrow. Step into any affluent suburban neighborhood and you will see this wealth-destroying environment in plain sight. The driveways are lined with depreciating luxury SUVs leased at 8. The sprawling homes are leveraged to the absolute limit with jumbo mortgages. The perfectly manicured lawns are maintained by credit cards carrying rolling balances. It looks like the pinnacle of the American dream. Underneath the surface, it is a fragile ecosystem of debt. This environment is a masterclass in financial camouflage. The people living in these homes are cash poor, stressed, and entirely dependent on their next bonus to keep the lights on. They possess all the trappings of wealth with none of the actual security. They have traded their financial independence for zip codes and status symbols. Do not let this environment deceive you. The real wealth is not parked in the driveway. The real wealth is quietly compounding in brokerage accounts, hidden from the neighbors, completely immune to the desperate need to impress. You have been sold a mathematical lie. You were told that working hard, cutting expenses, and putting 20% of your paycheck into a high-yield savings account is the path to financial freedom. It is the exact formula designed to keep you working until you die. While you are trading your finite time for a taxable wage, the people signing your paycheck are playing an entirely different game. They do not save their way to wealth. They engineer it. Look at the mechanics of your paycheck. You generate value. The government takes its cut before you even see the money. You pay your living expenses with what is left. Finally, if you are lucky, you park the remainder in a bank. That bank immediately turns around, leverages your deposit, and lends it out at 4 times the interest rate they pay you. You are the cheap capital funding their wealth. The middle class operates on this cash-first, tax-heavy system. But what happens when you stop looking at money as a reward for labor and start looking at it as raw material? The ultra-wealthy do not want cash. Cash is a liability. It bleeds purchasing power every single second it sits idle. Instead, they want assets. And more importantly, they want the structural debt attached to those assets. When you buy a television on a credit card, you are using consumer debt. It destroys your net worth. When a wealthy individual takes out a loan to acquire a cash-flowing business or commercial property, they are using structural debt. The asset pays the debt. But the real magic happens on the tax return. The interest on that debt acts as a tax shield. It reduces their taxable income, often to zero. They acquire an asset, the asset pays for itself, and the tax code essentially subsidizes the purchase. You pay 30% in income tax just for the privilege of working. They pay nothing, entirely legally. So how do you cross the bridge from the exploited wage earner to the architect of your own balance sheet? It starts by killing the concept of lifestyle inflation. Every time your wage increases, your psychological instinct is to upgrade your car, your house, or your wardrobe. That is opportunity cost in its purest, most destructive form. You are taking the exact capital needed to buy your financial autonomy and handing it right back to the system. To become an owner, you must decouple your time from your income. You need to understand EBITDA just as well as you understand your hourly rate. You need to understand how compound interest works for you and how your APR works against you. Your personal finances are not a budget. They are a corporate balance sheet. Assets must dictate your spending, not your salary. The system is not broken. It is functioning exactly as it was designed. The wealth gap is not a consequence of bad saving habits. It is the mathematical result of two completely different rule books operating in the same economy. You can continue playing by the rules written for the wage earner, waiting for a retirement that inflation will inevitably swallow. Or you can learn the mechanics of the owner. The math does not care about your effort. It only cares about your strategy. You buy the luxury car because you believe it signals success. You upgrade the house because society tells you it is the ultimate milestone. But the psychological reward is a ghost. It vanishes the moment the ink dries on the loan agreement. This is the hedonic adaptation trap. You are purchasing temporary emotional relief, masking the anxiety of being financially vulnerable. The thrill of the new purchase decays rapidly, leaving you with nothing but a depreciating asset and a rigid monthly obligation. That monthly obligation becomes a psychological prison. You are no longer working to build an empire. You are working to maintain a facade. The stress of sustaining this inflated lifestyle quietly hollows out your mental bandwidth. You wake up every morning not with the fire of an owner, but with the quiet desperation of a debtor. You have traded your future peace of mind for present-day validation from people who do not care about your financial survival. This emotional cycle locks you onto the most dangerous piece of machinery in the modern economy, the lifestyle treadmill. As your income steps up, the speed of the treadmill increases to match it. You run faster, you earn more, but your position never actually changes. You are burning massive amounts of kinetic energy just to stand still. The system loves this. The system relies on you running until your legs give out. Every raise, every bonus, every promotion is immediately absorbed by a new baseline of consumption. You convince yourself that you deserve the upgrade because you worked hard, but hard work without structural discipline is just voluntary servitude. The treadmill is calibrated to extract every excess dollar you generate. It ensures that no matter how high your salary climbs, your net worth remains dangerously stagnant. Look at the architecture of the modern consumer ecosystem. It is a frictionless trap designed by the brightest behavioral psychologists on the planet. One-click purchasing, algorithmic targeted ads, and seamless credit expansion surround you. The environment is engineered to make spending effortless and saving feel like a punishment. Every billboard, every social feed, every digital interface is a highly optimized extraction mechanism. You are navigating a digital landscape that equates consumption with identity. The environment trains you to look at a person with a luxury watch and see wealth. But true wealth is invisible. True wealth is the unspent capital sitting in a brokerage account. It is the equity in a cash-flowing business. The consumer environment blinds you to this reality, forcing you to compete in a game of visible status where the only actual winners are the credit card companies. Let us strip away the emotion and look at the raw mechanics of opportunity. Every dollar you redirect into lifestyle inflation is a soldier you have permanently discharged from your financial army. That dollar can no longer capture yield. It can no longer multiply through compound growth. It can no longer buy you time. You are not just losing the dollar, you are assassinating its entire future lineage. The system thrives on your inability to calculate this invisible loss. Opportunity cost is the silent killer of the middle class. When you finance a depreciating asset, you are taking on a double penalty. You pay interest to the bank and you forfeit the interest you could have earned in the market. The math is brutal and unforgiving. You are actively funding the balance sheets of institutional investors while starving your own. To break the cycle, you must weaponize the gap between your income and your expenses. This is the only margin that matters. When your income rises, your expenses must remain aggressively flat. That expanding gap is your acquisition capital. You deploy it systematically into assets that produce cash. You buy index funds. You buy real estate. You construct a portfolio that works relentlessly while you sleep. This requires treating your personal capital allocation with the cold precision of a hedge fund manager. You audit your cash flow. You ruthlessly cut the dead weight of status purchases. You optimize your tax strategy and maximize your tax-advantaged accounts. You do not save to save. You save to deploy. Every financial decision is subjected to a strict return on investment calculation. If an expense does not buy you time, cash flow, or leverage, you eliminate it. The consequence of ignoring this math is a lifetime of mandatory labor. If you allow lifestyle inflation to consume your margin, you will never reach the escape velocity required to leave the wage system. You will remain tethered to an employer, vulnerable to economic downturns and corporate restructuring. The true cost of that upgraded lifestyle is your autonomy. You are trading decades of freedom for fleeting moments of consumer convenience. Time is the only non-renewable asset you possess. When you inflate your lifestyle, you are literally spending your future time. You are signing a contract that forces the older, more tired version of yourself to keep working to pay for the luxuries you thought you deserved today. The math is absolute. You either master the mechanics of capital accumulation, or you will spend your entire life being harvested by those who do. Your greatest financial achievement is exactly what keeps you from getting wealthy. You have been trained to believe that the ultimate victory is paying off your mortgage, cutting up your credit cards, and living completely debt-free. But if you look behind the curtain of the global financial system, you will find a terrifying truth. The ultra-wealthy do not avoid debt. While the working class bleeds cash trying to reach a zero balance, the 1% uses structural debt as a weapon to multiply their net worth and legally erase their tax liabilities. To understand how the divide between wage and wealth actually operates, you have to unlearn the most dangerous myth in personal finance. You must stop believing that all debt is a penalty. It is a tax shield. And the mechanics of how the elite use it will completely change how you look at the money in your bank account right now. When you trade your time for a wage, you are participating in the most heavily taxed transaction on earth. You earn, the government takes its cut, and you are left to build a life with the scraps. But borrowed money is not income. This is the foundational secret of the modern financial architecture. If a billionaire sells $100 million in stock to fund their lifestyle, they trigger a massive capital gains tax, so they do not sell. Instead, they walk into a bank, leverage their asset base and a pristine FICO score, and pledge that stock as collateral for a massive loan. They get the cash, they pay zero taxes, and the underlying asset continues to compound in the background. The asset growth simply outpaces the interest rate of the loan. This is the difference between saving your way to a meager retirement and engineering a financial dynasty. You might be wondering how they pay that massive loan back without eventually selling the asset and triggering the tax anyway. The answer is the most calculated, ruthless wealth strategy in existence, and it relies on a mathematical loophole you are actively ignoring. It is a framework known as buy, borrow, die. You acquire an appreciating asset. You borrow against it to fund your lifestyle and acquire more assets, and you hold those assets until your death. When you pass those assets to your heirs, the tax code grants a step up in basis. The original purchase price is magically wiped out and replaced by the market value at the time of your death. The capital gains taxes are legally erased. The heirs sell a fraction of the newly tax-free assets to pay off the loan and keep the rest. The debt never destroyed them. It protected them. It shielded their capital from taxation while allowing compound interest to do the heavy lifting. You do not need a 9-figure portfolio to weaponize these mechanics. The math works exactly the same on a smaller scale. It comes down to opportunity cost. Every dollar you rush to pay toward a low APR mortgage or a fixed-rate vehicle loan is a dollar you have permanently removed from your own compounding machine. If your mortgage costs you 4%, but the historical return of the market is 10%, aggressively paying off your house is costing you a 6% spread on your own money. You are paying a premium just for the emotional comfort of being debt-free. The wealthy do not pay for emotional comfort. They optimize for yield. The gap between wage and wealth is not built on clipping coupons or skipping morning coffee. It is built on understanding that money is merely a raw material. An employee sees a loan as a chain. An owner sees a loan as leverage. You have to stop playing the game by the rules they wrote for the working class. The moment you stop fearing the mechanics of capital and start using them, you stop being a passenger in the economy. You become the architect of your own prosperity. To escape the trap, you must fundamentally reframe how you process incoming cash. You have to separate the engine from the exhaust. Every single dollar that enters your bank account is not spending power. The working class looks at a paycheck and calculates what they can afford to buy. The wealthy look at a paycheck and calculate what they can afford to build. The procedure is mechanical and ruthless. You must build a system where your active income only buys income-producing assets. You never use the principal to fund your lifestyle. You only use the yield. If you want a luxury car, you do not use your salary to pay the lease. You buy an asset that generates enough cash flow to cover the lease. The principal remains untouched, working for you in perpetuity. When you ignore this procedure, you trigger the silent wealth killer known as lifestyle inflation. This is the exact mechanism that keeps high earners permanently broke. You get a promotion, so you upgrade your apartment. You land a massive client, so you trade in your reliable sedan for a luxury sport utility vehicle. Your income rises, but your expenses rise in perfect lockstep. The trap snaps shut before you even realize you are caught. Your new expensive baseline now absolutely requires your new higher income. You are making twice as much money as you did 5 years ago, yet your net worth has barely moved. You have simply upgraded the quality of your treadmill. You are running faster just to stay in the exact same place, always one missed paycheck away from total ruin. The psychological toll of this cycle is devastating. You feel an intense cognitive dissonance. You look around at your premium zip code and designer clothes, telling yourself you are winning. But the underlying anxiety never leaves. You know deep down that you do not actually own your lifestyle. Your lifestyle owns you. You become a prisoner in a gilded cage of your own design. The constant grinding stress of maintaining the illusion of wealth consumes any actual joy the money was supposed to provide. You are exhausted from defending a financial perimeter that keeps expanding. The fear of having to downgrade your life becomes a paralyzing obsession that dictates every career move you make. This internal inflation is far more dangerous than the macroeconomic inflation reported on the news. The government is not destroying your purchasing power here. You continually justify these upgrades as well-deserved rewards for your hard work. You tell yourself you have earned the right to enjoy the fruits of your labor, but every single upgrade permanently raises your monthly burn rate. You are systematically moving your own finish line further away. A dollar spent on a depreciating status symbol is a dollar that cannot be deployed into the market. You are trading decades of future compounding for a fleeting hit of dopamine today. Look closely at the modern consumer landscape. It is a highly optimized extraction machine. The entire system is engineered to capture your surplus capital the moment it hits your account. Algorithms track your digital footprint, identify your income bracket, and serve you the precise luxury goods you suddenly believe you deserve. The broader economy relies on convincing you to convert your liquid wealth into depreciating liabilities. The sleek showrooms, the targeted ads, the seamless financing options, these are not conveniences. They are precision traps designed for the newly affluent. They exist to siphon the capital of those who finally make money but have no idea how to protect it. You have to reject the programming entirely. You must choose true financial invulnerability over the hollow appearance of success. The ultimate status symbol is not a designer watch or a European sports car. The ultimate status symbol is absolute unyielding control over your own time. And you can only buy that with capital you refuse to spend on looking rich. You have been told your entire life that the ultimate financial achievement is to be completely debt-free. You have been conditioned to believe that a paid-off house and a zero balance on your accounts is the absolute finish line of financial success. It is a highly profitable, carefully engineered narrative designed to keep you depositing your hard-earned wages into a banking system that immediately turns around and lends your money to the wealthy. The ultra-rich do not fear debt. While you are aggressively paying down a 3% mortgage, the financial elite are actively acquiring debt to shield their income and multiply their net worth. If you want to cross the chasm from wage earner to owner, you have to unlearn the middle-class morality of money. You have to understand the mechanics of structural leverage. Let us look at the mathematics of the paid-off home. Conventional wisdom tells you to throw every spare dollar at your mortgage. It feels responsible, but safety has an opportunity cost. When you bury your liquidity in the equity of your primary residence, that capital is dead. It is trapped in drywall and roof shingles, earning a 0% rate of return. Meanwhile, inflation is silently eroding the purchasing power of the cash you use to pay it off. The wealthy understand that capital must always remain in motion. They calculate the spread. If a bank lends you money at 4% and an index fund yields a historical average of 8%, accelerating your debt payoff is a mathematical error. You are voluntarily surrendering the 4% difference. You are choosing the psychological comfort of a zero balance over the mechanical reality of compound interest. But hoarding cheap debt is only the first layer of the strategy. The real wealth is generated when you learn how the elite use debt to legally erase their tax obligations. The tax code is not a weapon wielded against you. The government wants to stimulate the economy, so it rewards those who provide housing, jobs, and infrastructure. When you transition from an employee to an owner, debt transforms from a burden into a tax shield. Consumer debt, like the balance on a high APR credit card used to buy a television, is toxic. It drains your net worth with non-deductible interest. Structural debt is entirely different. When an investor uses a loan to purchase a cash-flowing commercial property, the interest paid on that loan is deducted from the property's income. The debt actively shelters the revenue. The tenant pays the rent pays the mortgage, and the tax code subsidizes the interest. The asset appreciates, the loan amortizes, and the owner captures the spread without tying up their own liquidity. You are taught to save your wages to buy assets. The wealthy use the bank's money to buy assets and let the assets pay for the debt. Yet, acquiring the asset is only half the equation. What happens when the elite actually want to spend their millions without triggering a massive tax bill? If you need money, you sell your labor. If a traditional investor needs money, they sell an asset. But selling an asset triggers capital gains tax. It disrupts compound interest. It shrinks the principal. The ultra-wealthy do not sell. This is the hidden banking system of the 1%. It is a strategy built entirely around asset-backed lines of credit. When a billionaire wants a new yacht or a sprawling estate, they do not liquidate their stock. They pledge their portfolio as collateral and take out a massive loan at a rock-bottom interest rate. Because loan proceeds are not classified as income, they owe $0 in taxes on that money. Their portfolio remains intact, continuing to grow and compound, often at a rate that far exceeds the interest on the loan. They live entirely on borrowed money, dying with their assets untouched, passing them to their heirs with a stepped-up cost basis that legally wipes out the capital gains tax forever. It is the operating system of global finance. The divide between the middle class and the wealthy is not a matter of saving a few extra dollars on coffee. It is not about waking up earlier to hustle harder for a stagnant salary. It is a fundamental difference in financial physics. The wage earner views money as a finite resource to be hoarded. The owner views money as a tool of leverage to acquire productive assets. You can continue to play the game you were taught, trading hours for wages and rushing to pay off cheap debt. Or you can step behind the curtain. You can stop working for your money and start engineering a system where your money mechanically, ruthlessly works for you. Look at the modern consumer environment. The trap is not just ignorance. It is a perfectly engineered ecosystem designed to extract your surplus capital. Every promotion, every raise, every bonus is immediately targeted by an environment optimized for frictionless upgrading. The system wants your new money, and it knows exactly how to make you surrender it willingly. The architecture of modern luxury is insidious. It does not look like a scam. It looks like a well-deserved reward. The luxury car lease, the premium credit card, the zip code with the better restaurants. Society applauds these visible markers of success. They tell you that you have finally made it. But this environment is a financial slaughterhouse disguised as a VIP lounge. Here is the mechanical reality of lifestyle inflation. It operates as a shadow tax on your rising income. When your salary increases by 15.5%, your baseline expectations automatically recalibrate to absorb that exact margin. The surplus capital that should have been deployed into income-producing assets is instead diverted into depreciating liabilities. You are effectively financing your own stagnation. The mechanic is simple but devastating. You trade newly acquired capital for an illusion of elevated status. The cash flow that could have generated a massive ROI through equity or real estate is instead locked into higher monthly overhead. You have increased your burn rate without increasing your net worth. Let us look at the exact procedure. You get a promotion. Your monthly take-home pay increases by a few $1,000s. Instead of routing that capital into a brokerage account, you authorize a higher car payment. You move into a slightly larger apartment. You upgrade your wardrobe and your dining habits. The money is gone before it ever has a chance to compound. This is a systemic bleed. You are not making massive, catastrophic financial errors. You are making a series of micro-adjustments to your standard of living. Each adjustment seems entirely justifiable in the moment. Each upgrade feels proportional to your new income. But mathematically, you are resetting your wealth trajectory back to zero. You are running faster just to stay in the exact same place. The psychological term for this is hedonic adaptation. It is the ultimate destroyer of wealth potential. Your brain quickly normalizes every new luxury, stripping away the initial dopamine hit and turning the extraordinary into the expected. The premium leather seats in your new car become invisible to you within a month. The expensive dinners become just another Tuesday. But while the emotional thrill fades, the financial obligation remains. You are now trapped on a treadmill of escalating costs. To feel that same sense of reward, you must spend even more. You must chase the next tier of luxury just to feel successful. You are feeding a beast that can never be satisfied, using the very capital that could have bought your freedom. The ultimate consequence is absolute financial paralysis. You may look rich on paper, but you are functionally broke. You have high income and high overhead, leaving you completely vulnerable to any disruption in your cash flow. If the salary stops, the illusion shatters. You have sacrificed permanent generational wealth for temporary social validation. You have been lied to about the fundamental nature of a savings account. You were told it was a safe harbor. a place to store your excess labor until you need it. But in the architecture of the modern financial system, a traditional savings account is not a vault. It is a slow, silent incinerator. While you wait for your balance to grow, inflation and currency devaluation are mathematically guaranteeing that your purchasing power shrinks. The middle class saves to feel secure. The ultra-wealthy understand that hoarding cash is the most dangerous financial position you can hold. To understand why your paycheck feels like it evaporates, you have to look at the exact mechanism designed to keep you on the treadmill. It starts with how your income is classified. There are two games being played in the global economy. The first is the wage game. You trade your time for a salary, and the tax code punishes you for it. Earned income is the most heavily taxed capital on the planet. By the time your paycheck hits your account, federal taxes, state taxes, and payroll deductions have already siphoned away a massive percentage of your labor's value. You are taxed before you even have the chance to invest. The system is operating exactly as designed. It relies on a massive pool of workers who focus entirely on increasing their salary, completely blind to the fact that scaling a W-2 wage just scales the tax burden. But there is a second game, a system where the highest earners legally bypass this penalty, and it relies on a financial tool you have been taught to fear. The middle class views debt as a moral failing or a tool for consumption. They use it to finance depreciating liabilities like cars, clothes, and vacations. The wealthy view debt as tax-free leverage. When you borrow money against an asset, that capital is not recognized as taxable income. This is the mechanics of the tax shield. You acquire a cash-flowing asset, let the revenue service the debt, and use the depreciation to offset your tax liability. You are no longer trading time for money. You are deploying capital to acquire systems that generate revenue independently of your physical labor. The banking system is not your enemy, but it is not your friend either. It is a utility, and right now you are the product being sold, not the architect using the tool. Understanding leverage is only half the equation. The real separation between wage earners and wealth builders comes down to a mathematical concept that the human brain is notoriously bad at comprehending. Compound interest is not just a line on a spreadsheet, it is the gravitational force of wealth. But the inverse is also true. Every dollar you spend on lifestyle inflation carries a brutal opportunity cost. When you upgrade your lifestyle just because your salary increased, you are not just losing the purchase price. You are murdering the future compound growth of that capital. You are sacrificing millions in future net worth for a temporary dopamine hit today. Wealth is not created by the sheer force of your physical labor. It is engineered through the disciplined, systematic allocation of capital into assets that compound over decades. The transition from wage earner to wealth owner is not a matter of working longer hours. It is a psychological and structural rewiring. It requires you to stop looking at your income as money to be spent and start looking at it as soldiers to be deployed. The hustle culture industry wants you exhausted, running on a hamster wheel of endless labor, chasing a finish line that keeps moving. Real wealth is silent, calculated, and mechanical. It is time to stop playing the game they designed for you and start building the system that works for you. To build this machine, you have to engineer an artificial ceiling on your consumption. When your income spikes, your expenses must flatline. That widening gap between what you earn and what you burn is your only real weapon. You take that delta and you automate its deployment into income-producing assets before the money even hits your primary account. You strip away the friction of human emotion. You remove the temptation to upgrade your lifestyle. You let the system blindly execute the acquisition of equity, month after month. The math behind this strategy is ruthless and undeniable. The exact moment the yield from those accumulated assets surpasses your artificially capped living expenses, you achieve financial escape velocity. You have officially bought back your time from the market. You are no longer dependent on liquidating your lifespan for a paycheck. This is the only definition of wealth that actually matters. It is not about projecting status to strangers. It is about possessing the absolute sovereignty to wake up every single morning and dictate exactly how your day will unfold. If you refuse to internalize this, the penalty is your entire life. You will remain permanently trapped in the cycle of upgrading your own cage, working until your body breaks down, just to finance a lifestyle you barely have the energy to enjoy. Think back to the dopamine hit of your last major luxury purchase. That was not a symbol of your success. That was a financial anchor, deliberately designed to keep you bound to an economic machine that feeds on your perpetual exhaustion. You can either fund your own liberation or you can finance your own captivity. You have been programmed to believe that being completely debt-free is the ultimate financial achievement. It is a middle-class trap designed to keep you trading time for wages until you die. Look at the balance sheets of the ultra-wealthy. You will not find zero balances. You will find millions, sometimes billions, in structural debt. Why would people with unlimited cash actively choose to borrow money? The answer exposes the fundamental difference between how an employee views money and how an owner architects wealth. For the wage earner, debt is a chain. It is a credit card balance at a 24% APR used to fund lifestyle inflation. It is a liability that drains your monthly cash flow to pay for depreciating assets. But step across the wealth divide, and the math flips. For the owner, debt is a tax-free tool for aggressive expansion. How exactly does borrowing money protect your money from the government? You have been told that a higher salary is the finish line, that if you just work hard enough to double your paycheck, you will finally be wealthy. It is the most expensive lie you will ever believe. Your salary is not a wealth-building tool. It is a highly taxed, highly regulated mechanism designed to keep you functioning as a producer in someone else's system. The moment you cross into the higher tax brackets, you realize that earning more wages is the slowest, most punishing way to build net worth. So if a high income does not create wealth, what actually does? The middle class operates on a simple, flawed equation. Work, get paid, pay taxes, spend, and save the scraps. This is the wage cycle. Earned income is the highest taxed money on the planet. When you get a raise, the government takes a larger percentage of your newly acquired money before it ever hits your bank account. You celebrate a promotion, but you are actually increasing your tax burden and stepping right into the trap of lifestyle inflation. You buy a better car, upgrade your zip code, and suddenly that higher salary is completely absorbed by higher liabilities. The ultra-wealthy do not play this game. They know that true financial velocity requires stepping outside the W-2 ecosystem. But how do you stop trading time for highly taxed dollars and start playing the game of the 1%? You have been conditioned to believe that being debt-free is the ultimate financial finish line. You celebrate paying off the mortgage. You cut up the credit cards. You sleep better at night thinking you owe nothing to anyone. But while you are emptying your bank account to escape the bank, the ultra-wealthy are using that exact same banking system to multiply their net worth. Debt is not a disease, and right now, you are holding it by the wrong end. The middle class uses debt to consume. The wealthy use debt to acquire. The difference between those two actions is the entire reason the wealth gap exists. But to understand how the 1% actually operates, you have to unlearn the most dangerous financial myth you were ever taught about paying cash. You have been lied to about the fundamental nature of your paycheck. Society insists that a high salary is the ultimate financial finish line. Earn more, save a percentage, avoid debt, and eventually you will be wealthy. It sounds perfectly logical. It is also the exact blueprint designed to keep you permanently trapped in the middle class. A high wage does not make you rich. It makes you a highly taxed, highly vulnerable workhorse. When you trade time for a salary, you are participating in the most inefficient tax structure in the global economy. Every dollar you earn is taxed before it ever hits your bank account. The wealthy do not operate this way. They do not focus on generating income. They focus on acquiring assets. This distinction is not semantics. It is the mechanical difference between working for money and forcing money to work for you. But acquiring assets requires capital, and if saving your leftover heavily taxed wage is a mathematical dead end, how do you cross the chasm from employee to owner? The mechanism the ultra-wealthy use to multiply their net worth without triggering the IRS is the exact tool you were taught to fear. You have been conditioned to believe that the ultimate financial achievement is a zero balance. You pay off your mortgage, you cut up your credit cards, and you sleep soundly, believing you have won the game. You have actually just opted out of the system the ultra-wealthy use to multiply their net worth. Being completely debt-free is a middle-class luxury. It is a psychological safety net that costs you millions in lost opportunity. To understand why the richest families on earth are heavily leveraged, you have to look at the math they teach in private banking, not public school. The gap between your paycheck and their portfolio isn't about saving more of what you earn. It is about fundamentally changing how you view money you haven't earned yet. The secret lies in a concept called the tax shield. When you work for a wage, you are taxed at the highest possible rate. The government takes its cut before the money ever hits your account. You take the leftovers, save a fraction, and slowly buy assets. That is the wage trap. The wealthy do not accumulate assets with post-tax income. They buy assets, let them appreciate, and then borrow against them. Because the IRS taxes income, the IRS does not tax debt. If your portfolio grows by $1 million and you sell it, you trigger massive capital gains taxes. If you borrow $1 million against that exact same portfolio, you pay exactly zero in taxes. You get the liquidity. You keep the asset. The asset continues to compound. You just unlock tax-free cash. But how do you service that loan without eventually liquidating the asset? That brings us to structural debt. You have been sold a mathematical impossibility. You were told that if you work hard, save a portion of your paycheck, and wait 40 years, you will eventually become wealthy. That is not a wealth strategy. That is a wealth transfer. You are transferring your life's energy to a financial system designed to quietly drain your purchasing power before you ever reach the finish line. Let us look at the cold mechanics of a wage. A wage is linear. You trade 1 hour of your life for a fixed number of dollars. But the economic system you live in is exponential. Inflation compounds. The cost of housing, healthcare, and basic survival compounds. When you rely solely on a wage, you are fighting an exponential force with a linear weapon. You are mathematically guaranteed to lose. Your entire life, you have been conditioned to believe that paying off your mortgage, cutting up your credit cards, and reaching a zero balance is the pinnacle of financial success. But the people who actually own the world are doing the exact opposite. They are accumulating massive amounts of debt on purpose, and they are doing it to legally erase their tax bills. The middle class uses debt to buy things they cannot afford. The wealthy use debt to acquire assets that pay them to own them. To understand how the 1% weaponizes money, you have to look at the math that keeps the working class trapped in a cycle of dependency. You think a high salary is the key to financial freedom. A high salary is the most heavily penalized financial position in the modern economy. The moment you start earning more, the system is designed to take more. This is the trap of the working wealthy. You are trading time for dollars in an environment where earned income is taxed at the absolute highest marginal rates. So while you celebrate that six-figure promotion, the architect of your company is playing a completely different game. They aren't trying to increase their salary. In fact, they are actively trying to shrink it. Because true wealth isn't about how much you make. It is about how you structure what you own. You have been lied to about the fundamental nature of money. You were taught that a high salary is the ultimate goal, and that debt is a disease you need to cure. But if you look at the balance sheets of the ultra-wealthy, you will see the exact opposite. They minimize their taxable income to near zero, and they accumulate massive amounts of debt, because the middle class uses debt to buy liabilities, while the wealthy use debt to buy assets. And the gap between those two strategies is where your financial freedom is bleeding out. Your paycheck is the most highly taxed form of money on the planet. When you trade time for a wage, the government takes its cut before the money ever hits your account. You are operating on what is left over. This is the mechanical reality of the W-2 system. It is designed for extraction. You work, you are taxed, you spend, and you attempt to save the scraps. You cannot out-earn this mathematical disadvantage simply by working harder. The harder you work, the higher your tax bracket, and the steeper the penalty for your effort. So, if a high salary is a mathematical trap, how do the architects of wealth actually accumulate capital without triggering the tax hammer? The answer lies in a concept that terrifies the average employee, but builds empires for the owner. The ultimate financial trap is not credit card debt. It is the deeply ingrained belief that becoming completely debt-free is the finish line. You have been conditioned by a system designed to extract your labor to believe that paying off every cent you owe is the highest form of financial virtue. But while you are aggressively paying down a low-interest mortgage to achieve peace of mind, the architects of the global economy are using the exact same banking infrastructure to borrow billions. They are not doing this because they lack cash. They are doing this because they understand a mathematical reality that the middle class is deliberately shielded from. To bridge the gap between being an employee and becoming an owner, you have to stop looking at money as a reward for your time and start looking at it as a mechanical tool. The middle class views debt as a moral failing and a burden to be eliminated. The ultra-wealthy view structural debt as a tax-free instrument of acquisition. When you pay cash for a depreciating lifestyle asset, you are trading post-tax dollars for something that loses value every single day. When a wealthy individual wants to acquire an asset, they borrow against their existing portfolio. The loan is not recognized as taxable income. The interest they pay on that loan often acts as a tax shield, legally reducing their overall tax burden while they retain their capital to generate more yield. Your whole life, you were told that debt is a financial disease, a trap to be avoided at all costs. You were taught to save your wages, pay off your house, and wait patiently for retirement. But while you are busy paying down your credit cards and saving pennies, the ultra-wealthy are aggressively accumulating debt. They are not doing it to buy designer clothes. They are doing it to buy the world. The gap between your paycheck and their net worth is not about how hard you work. It is about a cold, mechanical misunderstanding of what debt actually is. To understand why the middle class is shrinking, you have to look at the math of inflation and taxes. And more importantly, you have to look at the hidden mechanism the wealthy use to bypass both. You have been conditioned to believe that paying off your mortgage and living debt-free is the ultimate financial finish line, that is a sterilized, manufactured dream designed to keep you trading your time for wages until the day you die. The architects of the global financial system do not fear debt. While you are aggressively paying down a 3% interest rate, the ultra-wealthy are using the exact same banking system to borrow millions, pay zero in taxes, and geometrically expand their net worth. The gap between your paycheck and their portfolio has nothing to do with skipping your morning coffee. It has everything to do with a mechanical misunderstanding of how money actually moves. To bridge that gap, you first have to unlearn the concept of ownership as you know it, because the way you were taught to buy assets is exactly what triggers your heaviest financial penalty. You have been programmed to believe that saving your money is the ultimate financial virtue. You work, you pay your taxes, and you lock the leftover scraps in a high-yield savings account, waiting for the day you finally have enough. It is a comforting lie. Your savings account is not a vault, it is a slow-motion incinerator. While you are trading hours for wages and celebrating a 4% interest rate, the financial elite are playing an entirely different game. They do not save. Let us look at the math they do not teach you. When you hold cash, you are holding an asset mathematically guaranteed to lose value. Inflation is the invisible tax on the middle class. If inflation runs at 3% and your account yields 4% after taxes, your real return is negative. You are literally paying the bank for the privilege of losing your purchasing power. The wealthy understand this mechanical reality. They know that cash is a liability disguised as safety. So if they are not hoarding cash, where exactly is the money going? You have been lied to about the virtue of a zero balance. Society tells you that paying off your mortgage, clearing your car loan, and keeping your credit cards at zero is the ultimate financial goal. It is a financial trap. The middle class is obsessed with debt elimination. You trade your time for a wage, pay the highest marginal tax rate legally allowed, and then use the scraps to pay down cheap debt. You are actively destroying your own liquidity. While you are hyper-focused on becoming debt-free, the ultra-wealthy are hyper-focused on becoming equity-rich. They do not fear debt. But to understand how they use liabilities to generate tax-free cash flow, you first have to unlearn the biggest lie about the money sitting in your bank account. The most dangerous financial position you can be in right now is completely debt-free. Society has convinced you that zero debt is the ultimate financial finish line. You have been taught to save your wages, pay cash for your lifestyle, and wait patiently for retirement. But while you are celebrating a zero balance, the ultra-wealthy are using debt to build empires entirely tax-free. The gap between your wage and their wealth has nothing to do with saving harder. It has everything to do with how you view a loan. To understand why your savings account is bleeding you dry, you have to look at the mechanical difference between consumer debt and structural leverage. You are probably rushing to pay off your mortgage, clear your car loan, and finally reach that holy grail of being debt-free. You have been conditioned to believe that zero debt equals financial freedom. But if you look closely at the balance sheets of the ultra-wealthy, you will notice something terrifying. They are drowning in debt, and they are doing it on purpose. The middle class treats debt as a moral failing, a heavy chain around their neck. The wealthy treat debt as a tax-free instrument of leverage. The gap between your paycheck and their net worth is not a matter of skipping lattes or working harder at your day job. It is about understanding the mechanics of money that the global banking system desperately hopes you never figure out. To see the illusion, you have to look at what actually happens when you trap all your liquidity inside a paid-off house. You have been lied to about the most fundamental rule of money. You were told that getting out of debt is the ultimate financial goal. You were told that a paid-off mortgage and a high-yield savings account are the twin pillars of the American dream. But if you look at the balance sheets of the ultra-wealthy, you will not find zero debt. You will find millions, sometimes billions of it. Why do the people with the most money borrow the most? The answer lies in a mechanical flaw in how the middle class is taught to view a dollar.